Welcome to our online module on how to teach sexual health education to individuals with an intellectual disability. Our names are Bridget and Jen, and we are two occupational therapy students from the University of Toronto. Today, we present a module designed for occupational therapists or other allied social and healthcare professionals intended to direct sexual health education for individuals with an intellectual disability. The overall objective of today's module is to discuss how to best enable sexuality for clients and patients who have an intellectual disability. Specifically, we will highlight where the gap exists regarding sexual health education of individuals with intellectual disabilities, identify the associated occupational therapy role, identify educational models and strategies to implement in practice, and finally, provide additional resources, supports, and references. To start things off, we must first recognize that a major gap exists. Specifically, a gap currently exists regarding the availability and abundance of sexual health education tailored for individuals with an intellectual disability. Widespread and inaccurate assumptions presume that people with intellectual disabilities have little interest in developing intimate relationships and/or engaging in sexual behavior. As a result, people with intellectual disabilities have disproportionate access to appropriate sexual health information as opposed to their neurotypical counterparts. Not only does this lack of educational access and opportunity instigate a degree of occupational deprivation, but also increases this population's risk of exploitation and abuse, sexually transmitted infection, and unintended pregnancy. Addressing this gap is crucial to not only enable a holistic and empowered quality of life for all individuals, but to also protect said population from potential risks. When armed with accurate and informative knowledge, people with intellectual disabilities can take an active role in their own self-protection and safeguards. It's also worth noting that the limited amount of sexual education that is tailored for individuals with intellectual disabilities take on a fear-mongering approach. That is, much of the current curriculum that exists focuses solely on the negative consequences associated with sex, rather than cultivating a sex-positive view and environment. Although educating and understanding these potential consequences are extremely important, it's equally vital to foster opportunities where our patients or clients can learn in a manner that validates, encourages, and affirms one's individuality and sexuality. OTs are well positioned to support the sexual health education of individuals with intellectual disabilities and thereby address this inherent gap. Sex and sexuality are inherent to the human experience and contribute to the daily lives of all individuals. OTs can and would acknowledge the person, so for example, their sexuality or diagnosis, within their environment and in alignment with their occupation, so for example, the individual's sexual health practices. This delicate balance between understanding the person, their environment, and their occupation is what differentiates OTs from other healthcare professionals. Acknowledging this aforementioned balance is particularly vital given the intricacies and social norms associated with sexuality and sexual health. OTs can help to educate and thereby enable this natural facet of life. Rather than typical didactic methods of educating, individuals with an intellectual disability may better learn through a more interactive teaching strategy, individualized to the unique needs of each person. In accordance with this, occupational therapists are client-centered, creative, and adaptive healthcare professionals. Occupational therapists can provide valuable insight and strategies, tailoring sensitive and intimidating learning material to clients and their families, thereby making education accessible, comprehensible, and meaningful. Some educational strategies that OTs are well positioned to utilize include social behavioral mapping, social stories, chaining, and components of applied behavioral analysis. all of which are supported by several OT models and frames of reference. So, how do we even go about bringing up this topic with our patients or clients? How do we ensure that any individuals, let alone those with an intellectual disability, feel safe and comfortable to discuss what is considered a taboo topic? The PLISSIT model is a great place to start. PLISSIT stands for permission, limited information, specific suggestions, and intensive therapy. Permission involves gaining permission or asking permission from patients to discuss feelings and concerns related to sexual health. At this stage, it's important to confirm confidentiality, use open-ended questions, and ensure that all assumptions about the client's sexual practices, orientation, or knowledge level are withheld. This stage provides clients an opportunity to explore and speak openly about possible issues. However, it is to be done only with the client's discretion. The limited information stage involves providing information that will be helpful to the client, but ensuring that the information is specific to answering the client's questions. This stage may be particularly useful to dispel any myths or misconceptions that the client may withhold. Specific suggestions involves offering specific recommendations that acknowledge the particular sexual issue at hand, while appreciating the patient's unique situation. Suggestions may specify areas of behavioral change or steps of action. It's very important to note that at this stage, you may choose to refer your patient to another clinician depending on your knowledge and comfort level around useful interventions. Some areas of specific suggestion may include topics around sexual pain, erectile dysfunction, body image, or trauma and abuse, just to name a few. And finally, intensive therapy is the last stage, which includes a minority of patients who require intensive therapy surrounding a particular issue. This level of intervention is often a long-term and addresses complex physical, emotional, and psychological factors. OT should definitely refer to another clinician at this point, unless they have specialized training in sex therapy.
There are a number of different models that OTs can utilize to effectively teach sexual health education to individuals with an intellectual disability. Although these models have not all been used specifically for individuals with an intellectual disability, it does not mean they are ineffective. It simply means they have not yet been trialed with this population, illuminating the need for OTs to utilize them when teaching sexual health education to this population. The four models that will be discussed are the Information, Motivation, and Behavioral Skills model, the Direct Instruction model, the use of technology, and circles. The first model, the Information, Motivation, and Behavioral Skills, IMB model, has been proven to be an effective model to teach sexual health education. This model has three elements. 1. Information that is directly relevant to sexual health and is easy to apply in the individual's own life. 2. Motivation to use the knowledge to avoid negative sexual health outcomes and to promote sexual health. And 3. Behavioral skills to carry out the healthy behaviors, where practice and role play are seen as necessary. Specifically, there are 3 different types of motivation within individuals that this model highlights, which include emotional, personal, and social. Emotional motivation is an individual's response to sexuality and sexual behaviors that may relate to their sexual health. Personal motivation is an individual's attitudes and beliefs about a specific behavior, predicting whether or not they will engage in that behavior. Finally, social motivation is an individual's feelings regarding social norms and support for a behavior. The last part of the model is the behavioral skills. Behavioral skills are the skills and one's ability required to carry out the information they have learned. This component also encompasses one's motivation to complete the behavior. An example of this model in practice specific to sexual health is on the topic of contraceptive use. For this, the information component of the model would include obtaining information about how different forms of birth control work, how effective they are, how they are funded, how to discuss this with healthcare providers and/or partner, and their effectiveness for protection against STIs and/or pregnancy. This section further includes providing information about where and how to obtain different methods of birth control in the community, which directly translates to the health behavior of accurately using contraceptives. The next aspect that one would have to address is an individual's motivation to engage in the health behavior with the information they have. So, the emotional, personal, and social motivations specific to each individual would have to be explored. For example, for emotional motivation, an individual may feel uncomfortable talking about the use of contraceptives, such as condoms, with their partner, which may influence their engagement with the health behavior. For personal motivation, an individual may believe that the use of condoms makes intercourse less enjoyable, and therefore not engage in the health behavior. And for social motivation, an individual may think that their friends are not using birth control, so they don't have to as well, and therefore may not engage in the health behavior. And finally, we must address the behavioral skills involved in carrying out the health behavior of contraceptive use. For this, individuals must have the skills on how to properly use contraceptives, for example, how to put on a condom. Additionally, it involves one's self-efficacy and their belief in their ability to negotiate with their partner about contraceptive use, which in turn will help to increase adherence to the health behavior. The second model of instruction that would be beneficial to use with this population is the direct instruction model. This model first requires that individuals are grouped together based on developmental level and not their chronological age. This categorization will ensure that each individual completely understands one skill, idea, or task prior to moving on to the next concept, highlighting the learning in small chunks that this model encompasses. Specifically, this learning in small increments is completed by only adding 10% new material during each lesson. The other 90% is review of information from the previous sessions. The purpose of using the 10-90 strategy is to allow for greater retention and comprehension of information. Throughout the implementation of this model through the use of programs, it is essential that educators continually assess how individuals are doing and where adjustments need to be made based on individual abilities. Evaluation is ongoing with this model. Specifically, for individuals with an intellectual disability, this model has been proven to be useful because 1, it is based on the individual's needs and skill level. 2, it adapts to the rate of learning to the individual. And 3, it focuses on repetition and slow introduction of new material. It is important to note that the direct instruction model is based on specifically designed programs that one must purchase to implement in practice. There is currently no direct instruction model specifically for sexual health education, so it is the principles that were described that you can use and implement into your practice for this topic and population. The third model of instruction that would be beneficial to implement into your practice would be the use of technology, specifically the computer-based interactive multimedia programs. Education via technology can be conducted in a variety of ways, such as videos, online presentations with voiceover, games, quizzes, and images. Providing education via technology is beneficial for a number of reasons. Most importantly, because it allows individuals to go back and review information as often as they would like, aiding in retention of the content. Additionally, online instruction can be easily broken up into different segments, creating a logical teaching sequence. Finally, providing education through technology allows individuals to receive immediate feedback, such as a right or wrong answer on a quiz, where individuals are then able to repeat questions and learn correct answers to aid in their understanding. This model of instruction allows you, as the educator, to be as creative as you want, which directly aligns with the principles of OT practice. Overall, it is important to consider that for adolescents with an intellectual disability, these programs and models may need to be adapted to be more developmentally appropriate to ensure that the methods used meet the learning needs of the group.
The Circle's curriculum educates individuals with an intellectual disability on concepts related to personal space, social distance, and other various social sexual concepts, such as touch, talk, and trust. Given its concrete and straightforward nature, the Circle's program can be useful when teaching individuals with intellectual disabilities the intricacies of appropriate social boundaries. Occupational therapists can work with individuals and curate the curriculum, or circles, to match with individuals' unique array of relationships with acquaintances, friends, families, and partners. In essence, the circles program grades levels of social distance and intimacy through the use of color. Starting at the outermost red circle, this color represents strangers in the individual's life, whereby interactions would typically not take place on a regular basis. Moving forward, the orange circle represents acquaintances familiar by face, whereby it may be okay to smile or nod. The yellow circle represents acquaintances known by name, and within this circle, it may be okay to greet or participate in small talk, but trust within this relationship is still quite limited. The green circle is composed of extended family and friends. Within this circle, it may be okay to share personal news and stories, and also share a small degree of trust. The blue circle represents close family and partners. With the people who fall into this blue circle, it may be okay to discuss any subject and participate in consented acts of affection. However, it's important to distinguish here what behaviors or topics of conversation are appropriate between romantic partners versus family. And finally, the most inner purple circle represents the individual themselves, body parts where oneself can touch, and topics of conversation that they may want to keep to themselves. We want to quickly note that this overview of the Circles curriculum has been simplified for the purposes of this module today and does not provide the in-depth necessary to implement in practice. Please refer to the resources and references slide at the end of this module if you're interested in learning more. In addition to the standardized models and curriculums that we have discussed, there are a variety of other strategies that you can use in your practice to effectively teach sexual health education to individuals with intellectual disabilities. These include repeating material to aid with retention, being concrete with instructions through the use of pictures, videos, and objects to help aid with comprehension of the material, moving through information slowly, and practicing the learning material with clients through a variety of means, such as role-playing or modeling. Additionally, you should make sure to teach in a logical sequence, teach the information in a building block sequence, so starting with the most basic information and building up to more complex concepts, allowing enough time for discussions and questions on specific and sensitive topics, and ensuring to create an open, respectful environment where clients feel comfortable to learn. Finally, it may be beneficial to host small group sessions that allow for peer education in a cohesive, supportive environment. Create a question box where clients can submit questions if they're not comfortable and/or unable to verbalize them. Include the parents or caregivers when necessary to aid with teaching the information, but also ensure to remember who your client is and respect their confidentiality and boundaries. And finally, use guest speakers and/or peer educators so clients are able to learn from someone who they may find more relatable.
Throughout this presentation, we highlighted the large gap that exists regarding sexual health education for individuals with an intellectual disability, why OTs are well suited to fill this gap, and models and strategies on how to effectively provide sexual health education to this population. In addition to this slide highlights additional resources you can provide to your clients if they require more support, including interactive activities, quizzes, and more. There are also lesson plans that you can use to help guide your practice. On the right side, you will see a podcast called The Hookup, Sex and Relationships When You Have an Intellectual Disability. This resource is beneficial for both you as a healthcare professional and to provide to individuals with an intellectual disability. The same goes for the book below, Already Doing It, Intellectual Disability and Sexual Agency. This is a beneficial resource for the healthcare professionals as well as individuals with an intellectual disability. On the left-hand side, you'll see a variety of links which you can provide to your clients that have an intellectual disability for further information and learning opportunities. We hope that you have found this presentation both informational and resourceful. Now it is time to put our holistic and client-centered nature of practice to work to help narrow this gap and help educate individuals with an intellectual disability about sexual health. If you have any questions about this presentation or would like to reach out with additional comments, we would love to hear from you. We can be reached at the following emails on this slide. Now please complete the post-module 4-question quiz. Thank you.